Welcome to Cow Daily. We're early this week for many reasons. The main one being that my internet was off for 36 hours. And I've just received a text message earlier from the landlord to say that it might dip in and it might dip out over the next 24 hours, which is great when you've got a live stream planned on the 1 day a week that you're doing one. So, I mean, you know this, but I'll tell everybody who's listening out there. I don't know if there's any logic to this, but I just thought, like, start it as early as possible and then might work better or something. I don't know. So that's the general thrust. So if we disappear, it's basically my internet's just decided to have a shit fit again. Can you imagine 36 hours without internet, Alice? How would that go for you?
Oh no, that'd be rubbish. I've been like twiddling my fingers just because I've been on like a 24-hour ban.
Why?
But that's for calling my neighbour a Tory. But she is.
What, like over the garden fence, and then Zuckerberg was just like, nah.
No, I wasn't actually communicating with her. I was telling somebody about her. But she is. She puts like posters like in her window.
But she is a Tory.
Like she is. But apparently that was a defamation of character, which is saying the quiet part out loud as far as I'm concerned. But there we go. Yeah, she puts posters in her window saying she's a Tory. So
hold on. Right. You got defamation of character for calling somebody a Tory when they're a Tory and put things up in windows.
Yeah.
How does that work?
I don't know. I don't
understand the world anymore. It's like we're all kind of... Go on.
I may have worded it slightly differently than what I've
all right, we're in business now, right? What did you fucking say to her then?
I might have called her a fucking Tory twat.
Well, there you go, then. It's not defamation, isn't it? It's abuse. You're not allowed to talk to Tories like that. You what?
I didn't say it to her.
Well, it's not the point. I think you've missed the memo, which was that Tories are allowed to say anything they want, but if you question them in any way, then it's woke bullying. Did you miss that meeting?
I think I must have done. Yeah. It also said something about like threats as well, but there was literally nothing in there at all that was threatening anybody. It was just ridiculous.
Why don't you not go knock on her front door and ask her? Because that'll not be intimidating as fuck. Nah, it's wild. The internet now, man. You literally can't call a Tory a Tory anymore.
So that was like a bit, and like that was like mildly inconvenient because there was stuff that I wanted to post. But obviously, I had access to other parts of the internet. It was only one small part that I couldn't, as opposed to the entire internet. So yeah, I reckon because I'm online quite a lot, I'm not even going to pretend that I'm not. Less so recently. I've been like I have been like crocheting and reading a lot.
Same. I've needed to. Yeah, I've needed to just have that break because of how de-energized I was off being unwell.
Yeah.
I was telling you as well. I got better, and then I started doing kettlebells, and then I've done me back in. So I've had to like basically be like laying down and then stretching for the last 4 days. So Easter was just a bust.
Yeah.
But it's only sorry, go ahead.
I have just minutes ago bringing my chair into this room so we could do the live stream. I've pulled over a full-length mirror, and I can't just stop thinking about the room full of broken glass, which is next door. That I'm gonna have to clean up in a second.
It's been one of them days for us today, hasn't it? Like I didn't even know whether we were going to be able to do this because the internet was off until like 2.5 hours ago.
I know. And do you know what it is? I felt so jaunty, like when we were like, oh yeah, let's let's get it together and stuff and things like that. Because I've been having that thing, when you've been like, you've either been recovering from an illness and you're just starting to feel better and you get that kind of survivor's high, or you've had like a really horrific like 3-day hangover that you haven't thought you were going to survive, or you've been out on the rave, and then you get that day where you suddenly feel better and it's just like you feel like proper full of energy. Well, I've been like that because I have been feeling better, and then I went and broke the mirror. So
well, that's not great. That, like, especially the 7 years bad luck that I did actually take away for you by doing chaos magic, if you recall. The power of intent and intention.
Yeah, big up the chaos magicians. Thank you very much.
Bay up the chaos magicians. Anyway, this week's show, as early as it is, if you just join me now, we're early because of internet issues. So we're going to talk about Rwanda, not necessarily as a country, but that will be involved. But it's basically about the latest dead cat to be held on the table, in my opinion. That is the Rwandan refugees thing. Also, we're going to talk about a little bit about COVID and about the hospital situation. And we're going to talk about Britain first, fighting back, apparently, or whatever it is they're doing these days. They can't send memes of abused dogs out into the world as a thinly veiled guise for the fascist memes that'll come after them, because they got banned from the internet, which was one of the only justified bannings that I can think of in recent history. So we'll be talking about those absolute wankers handing the threats out. Go fuck yourselves. Should we talk about Rwanda first, though? Honestly, that Britain First video. Tune in for the Britain First video. Also, actually, we'll take some comments before we go on, because we've got some, and I hope it's not everybody complaining. Why aren't you on it, Seb? Let's see. How many of those have we got? Oh, Joanne's here. I was wondering where you were last week, Joanne, but she's saying here she got banned for calling someone a swine.
I once got a ban for posting a picture of a Moomin holding a flick knife. And yeah, that was probably one of the stupidest ones.
Yeah, that was the craziest, I think. There's out of many. Joanne's also said, "Ooh, hairy Mike." Is the hair on the microphone? Is this a longer beard than normal? Like,
possibly.
Is it? I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you why why that's the case. I forgot my shower gel before Easter. Sorry, not shower gel, shaving gel. So I've got like a full-on 4chan neck beard, like down to here, and like a full-on Breslau going on up here.
Yeah.
Shouts to Bernard Breslau, R.I.P. So basically, hence the garb today. I hope it fits in with your requirements there, Joanne. Slaz is saying number 23. Yeah, we know all about that, David. We know all about that. Slaz, is your thumbnail? I can't quite make it out, but is it the altar at Bohemian Grove? Because it looks a little bit like in thumbnail, like it's the kind of owl Moloch god that they have at Bohemian Grove. Please confirm this to us before we move on, because I cannot make out what that is, Slaz.
I thought it was like a guillotine on fire, like a blade. I don't know. There's probably some kind of like psychology testing.
Something afoot. Anyway, Rwanda. What's happening in Rwanda? So let's put, where's me running order? There it is. Rwanda slides. So a bit of background, in case you've been under said rock. The British government are basically being massive fascist again, and this is the latest iteration of said fascism under the guise of, well, it's not even under the guise of anything anymore, is it? It's just straight up fascism. So anyway, more from Rwanda. So we've got a guy called Steve Chalk here, and he says, "I'm a church leader and a former UN Special Advisor on Human Trafficking. As such, not only do I endorse Justin Welby's comment," that's the Archbishop of Canterbury for people who don't know, that the government plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda doesn't stand the judgment of God, but would add it doesn't meet the judgment of the UN either. So just a bit of background from around of what people are saying. Beatrice Smith, not the B. Smith from Prisoner Cell Block H, I can confirm. It's not the same one. And also the other one's an Australian fictional character. And this is a real Rwandan lady who says, Rwanda isn't a safe country for refugees. Take it from me, a Rwandan refugee living in the UK. Protest in the strongest sense against this, please. This is going to be so damaging. Hashtag Rwanda migration plan. Hashtag Rwanda concentration camps. I'll do this one as well before we move on to a bit chat. Adam Beankoff, would you say Beankoff? Let's say Beancough. That's a nice name. Boris Johnson says that the UK and Rwanda have a shared humanitarian impulse towards refugees. Here's what happened to the refugee centre Rwanda as part of a deal struck with the Israeli government. So it says the analysis of the interviewees' testimonies revealed that none of them were given the promised opportunity to apply for asylum in Rwanda or Uganda, a promise made by the Israeli authorities as part of the efforts to force them to leave. Their lack of identity documents exposed them to robberies, threats, and arrest, leading them to embark on a dangerous journey that included passing through South Sudan, and Libya in search of protection. Throughout the journey, the interviewees were subjected to human trafficking, incarceration, the threat of forcible deportation to Eritrea, harsh conditions of starvation, violence, slavery, and torture camps in Libya, and a dangerous crossing of the Mediterranean Sea from Libya to Europe. We've got more on this, Alice. I've got plenty more where that came from, specifically about Kagame, who's the leader of Rwanda. But so far, what do you think of that?
Well, so far that tweet about them having, this shared, what was it? UK and Rwanda have this same shared compassion or something.
Oh like God, that. Don't. I know. Yeah.
Is this the same Rwanda that I remember? Because I remember watching the news in the 90s and the 94, the genocide of 800,000 Tutsi, and there's that's stuff that's still going on today in Rwanda as well. It's not just about something that's happened sort of 30 years ago either.
There's stuff going on right enough.
Anybody who knows me knows that when we talk about stuff that the government's doing, that I do tend to get a bit irate. I think when people are saying things like, Germany did this during the Second World War, the Nazis did this, Adolf did this, whatever. Because I think it can be like lazy comparisons sometimes, and they're not always accurate either. That doesn't mean to say that they're still not shocking, but I think, you don't always kind of go for that comparison. I think this one, it's hard to avoid those comparisons because that is something that, a world war did boot off about in 1939. It was, one of the things. And in the 30s as well, lots of, there were fascist groups as well that were advocating Jewish people being sent to Madagascar.
That's right.
It's these were and still are fascist policies to have. So I think we kind of have to allow these comparisons, really. And certainly the tweet from Beatrice Smith as well, somebody who's from Rwanda, who's experienced it. She's here as a refugee as a result of that, kind of going, this is absolute madness.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And this is the thing. We've got the former, what was it, UN special dude about refugees. He's saying it. And then you've got somebody who's fled Rwanda. They're saying it. My overall take on this is I think it's like a dead cat once again. Linton Crosby written all over it. I honestly don't think one person will be sent to Rwanda. In fact, in this week's arse in Fenwick's window scenario, I will bear my arse in Fenwick's window if one person is sent to Rwanda.
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced about it. Well, actually, I thought, I thought that this was what the whole thing about Boris Johnson and the fine and everything like that. I thought that was the dead cat to try and steer people away from this, but a lot of people are talking about it. The reason that the Archbishop of Canterbury's got involved, for anybody that doesn't know, is because I think it was on Easter Sunday, Jacob Rees-Mogg sent a tweet out saying, Christ is risen, alleluia. And, so the Archbishop of Canterbury has retorted back, kind of going, this isn't exactly the most, sort of Christian actions that you have. And then lots of people on Twitter proceeded to try and lecture the Archbishop of Canterbury on Christianity, which was
somebody irately called him a virtue signaler. And it was, well, yeah, he's literally the point of his job,
I swear Twitter is wild. That is why I don't go on it that often. But yeah, obviously Jacob Rees-Mogg got a lot of people's backs up with that. I do agree with you on the point that, you know, having read more about it, I'll be really, really surprised if this goes ahead. Because it does look like it's breaking lots of international law. People are starting to kind of boot off about it now. It is, well, it's like quite a few people have pointed out, it's literal human trafficking. Like it literally is, and they're kind of they're going from the angle of, oh, you know, we're going to be saving the lives of people from all of these awful human traffickers, and Priti Patel has said that critics of her scheme have offered no solutions. Well, we have, you know, yes, kicked off when she wanted to drown refugees in the Mediterranean, and then we didn't let her do that. So now, you know, she wants to do this. It's like, no, we do have solutions, but they involve treating people with dignity and care, and also not selling arms to the regimes that create refugees in the first place, because ultimately people don't want to leave their homes ever, but they have to sometimes.
Honestly, will you just stop being so fucking sensible? I'm fucking sick of this sensible shit.
You know, it just beggars belief. They're like going on about all of these like refugees and how, you know, we'll stop them from risking their lives by doing the crossing. It's like their lives are already in danger. I think they said, yeah, we'll stop them putting their lives in danger. It's like, well, their lives are literally already in danger. That's why they're refugees. It's just absolutely mind-boggling, the language that they use, and I can't ignore it anymore. But yeah, no, I was interested when you said about, you know, it's a dead cat, really, because I thought that, you know, this was the thing that they were trying to cover up, and then I thought about it for a little bit longer, and I just thought it feels like they're just deliberately exhausting us with all of this stuff because we're being bombarded with it, and you know,
happening.
And it gets to a point where everybody's like, yeah, I know this is shit. I know this is wrong, but I'm so sick. I'm so sick of talking about it. I don't know if I can put the heating on tonight. You know, I don't know if I'm going to have a job next month. People are absolutely knackered.
Well, no, exactly. I mean, we like literally keep up with this stuff to enable us to do this show. And every week it's like, what we're going to talk about. We could do a follow up on that, but like we could do this, what we're going to do. It's like every single week, it's like, what are we going to get this down to? Because they keep throwing stuff at us, like not us specifically, but us as people, as citizens of England. So it's like, it's wearing and it's weathering. And it's, as I was saying at the top of the show, when I was ill, I decided to double that up with a screen break, and I've barely been on social media because I just think like, right, if I'm ill, I need to just use this time, because, and you know, when you come back, it's just a deluge of it again, and that's like, you know, it's something that like, knowing how it's affected us in the past, I have to like sort of be more in balance. I think it's a real like mind fuck. Yeah, I'm trying not to swear, but that's the word I want to use. Mind fuck. They're literally setting out to fuck our minds up. That's what it's about. Because if they do that, then they can just get on with like, if like, for example, if they get held accountable for like one thing like Partygate, 50 quid fine for a millionaire. It's not that much accountability, as we've said. But then they get 3 or 4 things through, because everybody's too busy talking about like either Partygate or the dead cat, and then there's 3 or 4 things that come after that. Well, we already know the media is in the main utterly compromised to some kind of like accountability mechanism. So my take on this whole Rwanda thing, it'll never get through the courts. But what it does do, it starts a war with the courts, much like Trump tried to do and succeeded in some respects with the Supreme Court in America. Because these people, populists on the right, they know that the judiciary, I said that really well this time. I really thought about how to say judiciary. Said it really not as good the second time, though. Judiciary. he knows that if he starts a war with them and compromises them, then like that's all that'll be in the papers, and the right wing press are going to be all like woke activist judges, which is a wild sentence to anybody who's been paying attention to their political persuasion over the last decades or centuries, for that matter. And but that's what they do. They just repeat, and people believe it, and then we end up in the shit, and which is where we are now. And one thing before I bring you back in, I'd just like to play a quick clip by anybody who's got a Ukrainian flag in their Twitter bio. Definitely loves this bloke. It's Rory Stewart. Said people tend to be on the centre right wing, and they they will overlook his voting record because he says a lot of nice shit like this.
You think of Rwanda as a particular form of extreme measure, because obviously many people have concerns about Rwanda as a place to send anyone.
It's very strange and very disturbing. I was in Rwanda 2 weeks ago. There are many things that are positive, as you know, about Rwanda. I mean, it's come out of a genocide. It's gone through an extraordinary process of national healing, but it's also an authoritarian state. But I think the most striking thing about it is that we are essentially exporting our problems to another country. And I think it's particularly bizarre to be doing it in Rwanda, because Rwanda is one of the very poorest countries on earth.
Do you think this is a gimmick, this policy? Can I ask you whether you actually think anyone's going to get sent to Rwanda?
You've put your finger on. I think it's extremely unlikely that anyone's actually going to go. I think they certainly haven't worked out the details of it. And my strong suspicion is they've made this announcement in order to distract from the COVID parties and the Prime Minister's fines and the lies in Parliament. I think there's no doubt at all that this is something that's designed to land on the front page of newspapers and distract people from the Prime Minister's troubles.
Right, before I bring you back in, Alice, I just want to point something out. Is Rory fucking Stewart ever in a house? Is he ever in his house? He's like, oh, every time you see him on the telly, he's like, yeah, I was in Rwanda a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, mate, I went to Cambodia to play darts with your mother. Like, are any of the Stewarts, any of them in the house? Stay in the fucking house, mate. Like, seriously, you always see him on the telly. Well, here I am in Afghanistan, and here's my extended family. Like, he's just fucking. I understand he was a diplomat and all this, but you'd think he wouldn't have the arse for travel anymore. But hey, each to their own. Fair one. Rory Stewart's basically agreeing with us there, right? Episode's over. The fucking sage of London has spoken. So, what do you make of Big Rory then?
What do I make of that? Well, he did say something which did strike me when I first heard this news, that this policy was going to be brought in, because I remember, and it's something that's still going on now, about how here in the UK we export our discarded single-use plastic to different countries and just have it dumped there so that it's not here, and then we don't have to deal with it anymore. I think that's a pretty horrendous policy, and that's when we're talking about plastics and stuff. The fact that we're thinking of doing that about people is, and he kind of picked up on that there, that it's exporting, it's exporting. Well, again, he's saying exporting a problem. Well, I personally don't see refugees as a problem. I wouldn't use that particular, I wouldn't use that particular language at all. But that's what they're trying to do, essentially. I'm more inclined to wonder if it is, but it's somebody. I don't particularly like Rory Stewart. I don't like politicians, but no, he is somebody who's on the inside a little bit, who does work within that field. And I think when somebody is saying, actually, yeah, I think this is entirely possible. You've got an interviewer asking him outright if he thinks it's a gimmick. I think it's something we can't rule out. Absolutely. Which again, so let's just assume that it's true, and that is what they're doing. How maddening is that? How many times is it? All people's lives, our lives, the lives of refugees, the lives of kind of really marginalized people are made into a game in a constant match of distract and deflect and blame, and they don't think twice about doing it, and it has massive implications on the rest of us. It's something I can't get my head around at all.
It's because they're fucking vile. They don't like look at these people as people, and like. But the thing is, they don't look at us as people either. When like anybody who has any kind of problem with them, or like it just wants to like hold them accountable, they're just subhuman. Even their own voting base is subhuman to them. There's something like really tapped about this particular iteration of the Tory party, in my view. And it's mainly because that like it's populated by sociopaths, arse lickers, and just general climbers, people who just see money as like the ultimate goal in life. Like there's so many of them where it's never enough. But these are just the politicians, or just the public face of this whole thing. I mean, I haven't had a chance to do enough digging, but I've been looking into the companies that are based in Rwanda. So if I do have to display my fine pert Geordie bottom in Phoenix, the Harrods of the North, in the window at Christmas, I'll do it as well. The most populous time for Phoenix window watchers. If I do have to do that, then I would suggest that like somebody's going to be making a shit ton of money somewhere out of these refugees being sent to Rwanda. So it's either not going to happen, or they've had it planned and just pulled it out, and somebody's going to make a gang of cash.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I will point out, and I'm not saying that like because I don't have enough information on it, but what I have found is a company called Infosys Limited, based in Kigali, the capital of Rwanda. Infosys is the company owned by Rishi Sunak's wife's dad. Anyway, I'm just going to move on to this next amount of slides because like I don't know enough about that at the moment. So we need to just come back to that at a later date. So the headline reads, Rwanda human rights fears a nation whose leader faces murder claims. Paul Kagame, president of nation, where UK plans to send asylum seekers accused of seeking to assassinate opponents. That's Peter Beaumont in The Guardian. One of Kagame's most prominent alleged victims was his former intelligence chief, Patrick Karegeya, who was strangled in a hotel room while living in exile in South Africa in 2014. Rwanda's former army chief of staff, Kayumba Nyamwasa, I think I did all right there, who also went in exile in South Africa, has survived 2 assassination attempts blamed on Kagame. I tell you what, I'm very sure this week, aren't I? Anyway, it goes on. Rwanda's record in hosting refugees from the DRC, which is the Democratic Republic of Congo, has in the past come under scrutiny. In 2018, Rwandan police killed 12 refugees after a demonstration outside the offices of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees in the Karongi district. It then goes on. Rwanda's previous involvement in receiving African deportees from Israel raises serious concerns over whether, even with the UK's reported 20 million funding, it has the resources or even willingness to host deportations. Of about 4,000 people estimated to have been deported by Israel to Rwanda and Uganda under a voluntary departure scheme between 2014 and 2017, almost all are thought to have left the country almost immediately, with many attempting to return to Europe via people smuggling routes. In addition, at least one deportee still in Rwanda, tracked down by Israel's Haaretz newspaper in 2018, described being destitute and living on the streets of Rwanda's Kigali, capital Kigali. Sorry, I was just like I just kind of zoned out reading that last bit there, just thinking that like destitute people are turning up to like the shores of Britain. They're then going to be stuck on a flight sent to Rwanda, likely to face what we've just described. Thoughts, etc., on that one, Alice?
It's inhumane, and often we know plenty of refugees that do stay here. Often they end up on the streets as well. You know, they end up on the streets here in the UK, and you know, life is extremely tough for them people, and they don't have the resources. They don't have the resources to do it. I saw it, obviously not exactly, you know, hitting edge journalism, but what I thought was a very well made meme recently.
Sorry, I just had a muscle spasm in my back there in the middle, so I wasn't grimacing at you.
Yeah, no. But to be fair, that it's pretty grim, because what this kind of meme was sort of implying was that, a few weeks ago we were all talking about, rooms for refugees, for people from the Ukraine, and all of this. Yes, let's welcome them in, let's open our doors. But maybe, and it was basically the colour chart thing, and it was like, the whiter it was rooms for refugees, and then as it went down to the darker colours, it was send them to Rwanda. But it's crude, but it's a pretty accurate description.
Of course it is.
Of what they're talking about doing, and the people in comment sections who are cheering this thing on, and and egging it on.
Anybody egging this on is a vile cunt. I've used the one C word I've allowed myself for this week. Well fucking done. Vile. What was I going to say? Muppet instead. He's a vile Muppet. Doesn't have the same impact. Sometimes you just need a pass out for the cunt word.
Yeah.
And this is the time. I mean, like, how on earth anybody other than Paul Golding and the rest of Britain First could possibly think this was a great idea? I think the problem is, though, there's a lot of people who do. They've been warmed up initially by the golden era of Facebook, which was when Britain First ran amok and basically turned everybody into a fascist. Like, that's kind of how it feels. Like, these type of things, even if they were said sort of 10 years ago, would have resulted in like people being made to resign. The problem that we've got here, there's no mechanism to get rid of these people unless it's at their own behest. I mean, for example, like Boris Johnson oversees some parliamentary commission, which is basically has the ultimate say on whether he goes or stays. So I don't know how we're going to get rid of these people. Like, I think this situation currently is I feel more bereft than at any time, because at least before there seemed like legal mechanisms to get rid of these people. And we've said this for a long time. It's almost as if they're forcing us into a position where we have to break the law. And then they're changing the law and tightening up the law around protest as they go. And then handing out, like, what was that lad in Bristol? What did he get? Like, was it 14 year?
Yeah, something like that.
And that's before they've even got through the policing and crime bill. So I'm just of the mind now. I'm like, well, how are we gonna do something about this? I'm not asking you to answer that question now, but I think it's something we should definitely get to it in a future episode. Before we move on, I want to just play one more thing, and it's just part of this thing that I was on about like, these Tories are either sociopaths or arse-lickingly stupid. And I think Tom Hunt, from the cavalcade of Hunts that have been a feature of the political landscape over the last few years, we've got Jeremy, we've got Crispin Hunt, and now Tom Hunt, the thickest of the bunch. Listen to this.
That's more than 28,000 migrants made that crossing last year, compared to over 8,000 the year before.
I've long felt that offshore processing is the only way to truly tackle this issue.
This is obviously offshore processing to stay in Rwanda, not to come here.
To stay in a safe European country, Rwanda.
To stay in a safe European country, Rwanda. Just next to Liechtenstein.
Yeah.
Absolutely out of their mind, this lot. Like, was it not Dominic Raab who had no idea there was a tunnel between Dover and Calais?
I think it was ferries as well. I think he didn't. Yeah, it was about the ports. I think that was Dominic Raab. That was before the
dumb
came up.
I mean, Liz Truss takes the dumb cake, but in my opinion, I mean, she is just vacant. But I mean, this is what's happened in my view. Like, Boris Johnson's just picked the yes men and the psychopaths and just pulled them in.
We said that ages ago when Matt Hancock was still kicking about, and that he was we were proved right on that as well. We always said that Johnson saw Matt Hancock as his useful idiot. And then further down the line, some text messages or some WhatsApp messages were leaked, which pretty much said exactly that. And then when the whole sort of affair thing dropped. That was just used as, Matt Hancock was used as the fall guy for that again.
Always was going to be
another dead cat. He was that was his last role as.
Well, somebody I know worked with him and said he's one of the stupidest people that person's ever met. So,
and it was evident every time he opened his mouth, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I don't like, I don't really like parliaments of any description, but you do see in other countries where they have ministers who have a background in the field that they are the minister of, so say it's, say it's health or something like that. They'll have a background in medicine themselves, or, they have a background in physics and, be a minister for science and that. But here it is, either you are directly, in the little politician growing factory that is Eton, or one of the other public schools, or you are very well connected. Yes, there are exceptions to that rules. Those rules with some of the MPs that we have, not everybody does have, those sorts of backgrounds. But for the vast majority of the ones that are in power, that's what you're looking at.
Too right, no doubt about it, and that's one of the reasons I feel so bereft, because you can't reason with stupid, and you certainly can't reason with sociopaths. So,
in a school where they're taught that they're entitled to this, that's what they're entitled to do because they've got this education, they've got this background, they've read fucking classics at Oxford and garble shite about Greek mythology all of the time, which has no bearing on,
all of the time,
whether people can, clothe their kids or not.
No, but this is the thing. They don't have that frame of reference in terms of like where people be able to feed the kids or not. And they always fall back on that. Well, just budget better then. You know, imagine like a rich person telling somebody who's not as financially rich just to budget better, and then having no self-awareness on why that could be a bad thing, and then having even less self-awareness that they are the ones in the positions of power who could actually change that at the stroke of a pen. But also not caring, even if they had that self-awareness. That's where we're at. They've always been like that, politicians. A lot of, like, the people who are attracted to stand for election immediately, for me, should be debarred from election if you're putting yourself forward.
Yeah.
But if you're asked, it's a different thing. Like, but you at least kick and scream a bit, before you do it. But I don't know the answer right now. No. I think this poses more questions than answers. But what I'd really like to do is just give it some thought over the coming weeks, and then try and do a solutions item, because I don't want to just sit there every week and just like go, well, this is shit. Tune in next week for more fucking shitty things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the reasons we start doing positive news, wasn't it? But every week we're just having to like wrestle with the biggest set of bastards on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or at least as close to. So what are you going to do? Fancy a bit of Britain first? Carry on.
Oh, God. No, but go on.
Well, you've got no choice because it's in the run order, so fuck off.
Exactly.
Anyway, here's this utter bastard. I can't stand this fucking dickhead.
Keep harassing people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, then you will get the Britain First cannons turned on you. You will get the Britain First treatment. We will find out where you live. We will find out where you work. We will find out where you study. And we will come down on you like a ton of bricks. So my message to you direct right now is stay the hell away from politicians on the right of politics. If you carry on, then you are going to find Britain First and our activists on your doorstep.
Ooh. Oh no. We're going to have that fucking fat-headed cunt at the door. Oh, I've done two. Had to really, it's Paul Golden. What do you make of Paul Golden?
He's just like a weaponized potato, isn't he? His husband. And I remember when he hid from an anti-fascist window in Belfast. I think that when he was, he was.
Right, I'm coming back in. Anti-fascist window in Belfast. Explain.
Yeah, I can't remember where it is now. This is my memory, right? Sorry, I've got a memory disorder for anybody who's not listened to any
Which is handy when you're
previous
doing a live stream. Like
episodes. Yeah, it's really handy. Like literally, unless it isn't like written down in front of me. But yeah, there's a building in Belfast. I can't remember why he was. I think he was in court there. I think it was when Jada got around the time Jada got sent down, but he didn't. But there is a in this building, and it's gorgeous. There's a stained glass window. If you're listening and you know what I'm talking about, please put it in the comments because I really can't remember. And it's like a stained glass window with like no pass around. It's like a tribute to the Spanish Civil War, I think. And he kind of he has to sit in this building, but he clearly doesn't want to sit in front of it. So he's kind of like positioning himself like squeezed in. And there's a really good picture of this like floating about the internet, but I can't remember the name of the building, but I would like to visit sometime.
Shouts to the Belfast people.
But that's this is first of all, why do they always make these videos in their cars like that? I don't understand. Is there a
Top Gear, like wank off over copies of Top Gear from the late 90s, early 2000 era?
Always seems to be angry men making these videos in cars, like kicking off about something, or like.
I'm telling you, they're channeling like some kind of Clarksonism. It's like Clarkson with a Hitler tash, basically. That seems to be the energy around the likes of Britain First and the sort of sycophantic followers. There's some kind of like, I don't know, it's just like really beige fascism. Like at least like old school. I'm not even going to get into like making jokes about fascists. You cannot do that anymore, can you? So I'm not even going to say what I was going to say because it just gets you fucking booted, doesn't it? It's like I remember getting booted for posting an anti-fascist meme which featured that guy who refused to do Hitler salutes from the actual Nazi era.
Oh yeah.
30 days, no recourse. So I'm not even gonna. But I just like there's a real beige fascism to these fuckwits. Like, can you imagine trying to have a pint with him? Like, I know it's like the pint test is like really hackneyed and whatever, but can you imagine trying to have a pint with Golden? Just he'd bore your fucking face off, man. Like, no, you would though, wouldn't he? You just like there's people who literally put him and Tommy Robinson on a pedestal in that eye, but like they're arseholes. I don't understand it. Forget about like all the politics and the fascism and everything like that. They're just arseholes. There's nothing, no redeeming features about them. But for some reason, the like at a time they became wildly popular, and they moved the needle. And now this fuckwit sitting there. Like, because some people have sent a few fucking funny tweets to Jacob Rees-Mogg, he's threatening people that he's going to turn up at their door. Is this not like, shouldn't he be getting arrested for this?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I don't know of any instances, somebody might be able to put me right on this, where Britain First have done that. I know Tommy Robinson's lot have been known to do this. There is footage of them doing that, turning up at people's houses, all coked up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Tommy Robinson has rarely actually been there himself. When he's done, I think there has been a couple of occasions where this has happened. I would imagine it would be the same with Britain First. Like, we've got Paul Golding sat there making all of these threats. What he would actually do is it would get other people to do it for him, and would happily see them people sent to jail once the police turn up. He's not going to help it. He's not going to help the people out who he's egged on to do it in the first place. He'll get somebody else to do his dirty work for him, and it's them who'll end up being locked up, and people don't know their names a lot of the time. They don't know their faces. They're not going to be contributing to the fund, to hire them a lawyer to get them, to get them off.
Yeah.
And if people are contributing for that reason, most of the time that money is going to be going directly into Paul Golding's pockets. Whereas
Generally,
the people that they get to do their dirty work for them, they are thrown to the wolves. And you often see that with young right-wing activists as well. You've got, a bit more bravado about them, a bit more fire in their belly. And it's really young activists who end up getting their fucking lives ruined when they get involved with these groups.
Well, you look at National Action. I mean, they weren't directly linked to Britain First, but it's from the same kind of milieu, isn't it? And it's like there's quite a few of them have been nicked and got to jail. There's some of them are like, it turns out they should have burnt their hard drives before they got nicked as well, because for people who've been like anti-paedophile, this, that, and the third, there's some questionable shit they've been charged with and found guilty of. So I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Happens all the time as well. We've seen
all
that lots of people connected with Tommy Robinson have been convicted of these things for all his stuff about grooming gangs and, you know, trying to pretend that he's like a champion of women's rights. You know, it's like you know, he's like coming in like fucking Jar Jar Binks. It's like, no, we don't need you. Like the feminist movement does not need the EDL or the likes of Tommy Robinson or anything else. Don't put these absurd characters in there when they're not wanted.
Well, I don't put them in there at all. But like, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, who the fuck do they think they are trying to intimidate people like that? Just because they've had a pop at the haunted Victorian pencil. And what else does it say about like the adjacent to this government and the people? I mean, he's the leader of the House of Commons.
I did see that video, the Paul Goldham video yesterday. I did see it, and my first thought was, I wonder if actually Jacob Rees-Mogg will actually respond to it. Like, what does he think of, you know, a group like Britain First basically saying, you know, that they'll, you know, that they love him and they'll protect him at all costs, and you know they're literally going to harm people who try and criticize.
Well, he's going to be all for it, isn't he? Because like, let's have it right. I mean, like, he's in this hand and glove. This entire jig, which is all this government is, it's a jig to move public money into private hands. Like, let's keep it real. These fucking arseholes making their videos in their fucking Rover Vitesse Fastback are just running dogs for this establishment. Like, they will go and do this stuff. But there's also this sickening forelock tugging thing that fascists do, where it's kind of like they're not trying to win over power for themselves. They're more than happy to just like stroke the bell end of the political class. You know, you saw that with like Oswald Mosley and all of the fucking like previous iterations of fascism. Like, I mean, like talking recently about like what's happening with Le Pen in France, and you know, this whole sort of runoff between like a fascist and a centrist neoliberal, which is the illusion of choice in some respects, depending on who you are and who's on the end of fascism or neoliberalism. It's usually people who are working class. That's the common denominator. You can usually divvy it up by like skin color as to which particular ideology is going to get it worse. Although like every person of color gets it bad from neoliberalism and fascism, just differently.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
The problem that we've got here is, like, will he even get arrested for this? He should be, and I'm not a grasser out like that, and you know, it'll not be me putting that to the police. But
well, no, he's put that in the public domain, so you know, I think that's
quite. I mean, but you know,
that could end up happening. I think you're right. I don't think Jacob Rees-Mogg will give a slightest shit. He might kind of give a half-assed murmur of, you know, disapproval or anything like that. He won't even
acknowledge it, man.
I think he's still raging about that time he got like a stick-on dildo put on the bonnet of his car, didn't he? Like,
I had no idea about this, but I'm really pleased to hear that happen.
I think it was Class War who did that. They kind of like they broke onto his property and put stick-on dildos all over his car, and he was raging about
Great news. All the best to everybody who's out there fighting the dildo front. Here's the thing. Like, just check this though. Take a moment, right? In this episode, we've spoke about like taking destitute refugees like to Rwanda who turn up on the shores of Britain, and actual fascists telling people, "I'll turn up at your door if you talk to this supposedly mainstream politician." Because that's what he's meant to be. The Conservative Party's meant to be a mainstream, like ostensibly on the surface, it's meant to be a mainstream political party, and you've got a fascist going to bat for them. Like when, no, go ahead.
No, just thinking we often didn't, when you've seen like fascist groups talking in the past, like years ago, when they've been talking about the Conservatives, often what their, kind of what their rhetoric has been is that, yes, they are, that, they're the Conservatives and they are meant to be the right-wing party, but they don't go nearly far enough. Like, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. Now they're not saying that. Now they're kind of going, no, that's great, we like this. If that doesn't worry you, then I don't know what, I don't know what to tell.
The whole lot of this is worrying because it's like the top bottom of it is if we would actually do anything about it, then we'll get the jail.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this mob, I'm not really sure whether they would because it's in their interest to keep them on the out. I mean, you look at like a different example, but kind of similar. Extinction Rebellion, right? If you're like somebody's in front of the courts, right, you get in the jail. Piers Corbyn today, right, is yet to get the jail yet. He's been arrested a number of times because a Tory MP like nudged him with his car and they were trying to like blockade the roads around Parliament or whatever it was. And like he's not got the jail. So my point is there seems to be like a selection of useful idiots allowed to run amok, but anybody challenging the status quo or the establishment's interests get in that jail. You might as well just walk to the jail before you've even committed the crime because you're getting done. So it's as simple as that. Get your towel on a bunk in fucking Belmarsh and try and talk to Assange through the fucking bars. It's that's what if you're anything other than like centre right or beyond, you get in the fucking jail.
Yeah.
And if that, mind you, it's not cancel culture, I do not know what is.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing, isn't it? It's like, we've got this video of him like threatening people, but it's like what was it? The left are the ones who kind of frequently get called snowflakes for, if they, for, disagreeing with people online and things. It's like, that is the ultimate display of I can't handle somebody having a different worldview to me.
Well, this idiot, like going on about freedom of speech when they got banned from social media, like just constantly fighting this culture war shit.
Constant free speech.
And then they're like, as soon as anybody else expresses, like has freedom of expression and speech, all right, I'm coming around your house, gonna frighten your nana.
Yeah.
What you work there? I'm gonna call you. I'm gonna nonce you right off to your boss.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm allowed to do. Oh, you can't say no to me, snowflake. It's like that's what these people are, and they can all go fuck themselves. To be quite honest, I don't even know what else to say. Fuck them. Don't not frightened of them in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. Go fuck yourselves, every single one of you. Fucking like imagine rimming the arsehole of somebody like Jacob Rees-Mogg. That's literally the pinnacle of this man's achievements in life. Like, I'm adjacent to this fucking horrible shitbag. And whilst being a horrible shitbag myself, well done. Well done. You won. You won at life. You won't win at capitalism, though. It's not for people like you, Paul. It's for the type of people whose arses you rim. They win at capitalism. You won't win fuck all, pal. You might get it. But keep rimming Tory arses. That's what you should definitely do. Definitely keep doing that, Paul.
What?
And like, I'll just keep saying it because Alice has nothing but that in her mind now.
Did
Paul
you know
Golden.
I'm a very visual person? Like, why do you say these things to me?
Strangely enough, it's not the worst thing being said right now. In the comments, Slaz, him and Jada need to be their own human centipede. To the point. Like it.
Slaz, man.
The Von Gay, aren't they copying the shouty cockney but actually funny taxi driver actor? Who's that? Who is it?
Sure.
You're gonna have to confirm. When she's also said they dildo, don't they do? I like what you've done there, Von. Fantastic work.
Nice. Well done, Von.
Yeah. We've got a one from Steve coming in with these usual good stuff. Cummins shifted the Tories to the extreme right when they withdrew the rip from 20 of them over the Brexit vote. They're now surrounded by infurious people that never had to compete for their position.
Yeah.
Steve's really good at like like, say if I say 300 words, he's minted putting it into a paragraph. Seriously,
into a couple of sentences. I do envy that skill, definitely.
excellent work. So before we move on to the last short section, fuck Britain first, fuck Paul Golden, and just fuck fascism in general. Okay.
I have actually got my a lovely day for anti-fascism T-shirt on today as well.
Nice. And it's the old school Guinness logos there. I'm sure like the Guinness family won't be happy about that, but what can you do? So anyway, just fuck Britain first, and that like up anti-fascism everywhere at all times, always. So what have we got? Let me just have a quick spy. Right, COVID. Got to talk about it. Nobody else is, strangely enough. It's went from like nothing to something.
Weird.
Right. So Stephen Riker on Twitter, he's retweeted a newspaper article which says, the number of vacant NHS hospital beds in England is lower than at any time since the start of the COVID-19 crisis, as per a Financial Times analysis of NHS data. Stephen says hospitals fuller than at any time during the pandemic, levels of occupancy above the danger level. What has changed is not that COVID is less serious, but that we are less serious about COVID. As somebody who's clinically vulnerable and has just had COVID, tell me more. What are your thoughts on the fact that hospitals are above the danger level for one?
Well, I did know that, but I think, you hit the nail on the head, is that a lot of people don't. And I'm hearing people who, not people who were stupid in any way, shape or form or anything like that, or people who are, who haven't been concerned about COVID and, but they've been abiding by all of the rules, been trying to look after people and stuff and things like that. But still hearing people say, oh, well, it's more like a cold now, isn't it? It's like, because that's how it's being put across. And there's been quite a few of us. I was one of them, because I've got like had like 3 jabs or whatever, who did get it and, didn't have really, really severe symptoms. So I think like, people are going, oh yeah, I was really ill, but then I was fine after a few days or whatever. But I don't think they realise the scale of how many people who've got it and are, as a result, ending up in hospital with it. And people do not end up in hospital with a cold. They just don't. And
no.
It's not the same as the common cold at all. But I think it's that kind of desensitization. Part of that's exhaustion. We've been having to live like this for like over a couple of years. I can kind of see times that I've even kind of been a bit like, oh fuck it, like can I just catch it and get it out of the way, because I know it's going to get me at some point, and then it did. Actually, on during a week where I hadn't really done much apart from go on the metro to get into town. I hadn't really been anywhere at all, and managed to catch it like that. So I think we're just, it's all of the, it's like a platoon of dead cats that we have at the minute, isn't it? So that people, there's been all kinds. There's been what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. There's been the COVID parties, the fines, and everything like that. Whereas COVID was quite a regular fixture. It was like a constant fixture in the news and everything like that. We're not.
It was all wall to wall for 2 fucking years, and now nobody's talking about it. And it's the worst it's like been for hospitalizations in that whole time.
We're not seeing that at all. It's just not being talked about. But I mean, I did know that myself, because I know people who work in the hospitals and and I mean, I knew so many people. Like at Christmas, it was just like constant notifications of people who were coming down with it. But it's been even worse recently. And normally when the weather starts getting a bit better, that's when it seems, these things kind of tend to tail off like a little bit, but it's just gone from 0 to 60 again, like everybody.
Well, it's the same old thing. It's like a small amount of a very, very large number is still a very, very large number. And like that, the big amount is cases. The small number is hospitalizations, but the cases are the biggest they've ever been. And I would suggest it's not really showing up because free testing's over. You're not legally required to do anything, so there's automatically going to be this drop off.
Yeah,
Go on.
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like basically we're in a really shitty position, which is like no mask mandate, no nothing. And I would suggest that like it's like being allowed to run out of control because it does fit into the Tories' privatisation agenda for the NHS. Asterisks next to that, haven't done all of the research yet. That seems to be the pattern that's forming. Have some pretty juicy stuff for upcoming episodes. But at the moment, like they basically just seem to be just allowing it to like run wild. And why on earth have we spent 2 years talking about hospitalizations, cases, whatever? Look, drop the cases, whatever. It's not a reliable metric anymore because we haven't got like all of the measures that are in place. But we always, like a lot of people, like always said, even on the right in the Tory party, that their measure would be the overwhelming of the NHS. Well, that's happening. Like it's happening. Yeah. That is happening now.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
if that's happening now, like, what are we going to do about it? And when we're back to that bereft thing, isn't it? It just seems to be watching this parade of flickering nightmares.
Well, I think what will happen is they'll just kind of ramp up the privatisation. Again, something that is already going on, that started years ago. This is not a new thing. People say the NHS will never be privatised. It already is being quite rapidly. But, there's lots of people who are very frustrated that they still can't see their doctor face to face. And understandably, like really upset about that. And it'll allow people to give more privatization their blessing.
Totally.
That's what they don't do anything unless it's going to directly benefit their pockets.
Well, I've seen some of the narrative from these like right-wing talking head ghouls, and they're already sort of making the case for like privatization as the solution because like to have a pre-prepared solution to fix the problem that you created yourself anyway. That's what's going off here, in my view.
Yeah, Wes Streeting is talking about that already, and he's meant to be Labour.
Wes Streeting will say whatever it takes to make him what he thinks he should be, which is the Prime Minister. Wes Streeting is an objectionable, snivelling little prick
really
is basically one of the most bad faith people in the country, never mind politicians, and that's saying something. He could slot in lovely with the Tories. Just cross the floor, Wes, fuck off as well. So, man, look, we've run out of time, but like, I don't want to end it on a completely sour note, but like, there's just a hell of a lot of shit going on in the world, isn't there? And it's like, we need to try and work at solutions and finding out what those are. But I'm not seeing much hope in the short term. In the long term, I definitely see a hell of a lot of hope, like 18 and 24-year-olds and beyond. There's loads. Next week, let's do a little bit on in France and how that could change things. Be Le Pen getting in or not? Because even if she does, she'll get one term. But it's kind of like how much can she wreck in that time? Her whole stated thing is like ruin the EU from within. So. Like,
I've got loads to say on that, but I will save it. But in relevance to today's topic, I was reading Marine Le Pen praising Boris Johnson's plans to send people to Rwanda.
There's your people. There you go. And Marine Le Pen thinks it's a great idea. That says everything about the government of the United Kingdom. Everything. We'll do a bit more. Bloody hell, it's windy out of nowhere here. It's scary now. It's probably just like whipped up out of nowhere. Like, whoa, slow down.
Can you see the trees behind you going, Raj?
Yeah, I also just had to scratch my balls there. So if you saw that on camera, my apologies. I really did as well. It was like I've been trying to get it done for like 15 minutes on the quiet. And then I've just realised I could have just put you in like single vision and off camera.
Literally, you have the power to do that.
You learn as you go along, don't you?
Thank you for sharing that with us all.
I'm literally having an over the clothes rag of them at the minute. There's nothing sexual in it. I'll show you.
I was about to say, calm yourself down, Leslie Grantham.
It's like political Leslie, isn't it? Hi, political Grantham here. Well, like I'll just get my balls out and whap them on the table. Fuck you, Britain first.
If you don't know what we're talking about, maybe go and Google Leslie Grantham webcam, or
Yeah.
or don't if you like to protect your eyes, because that again the kind of thumbnail picture that'll go with that will never ever leave you.
True. Slaz never told her whether that his thumbnail was Bohemian Grove on YouTube. There's about a minute left to let her know, Slaz. Joanne's saying, I'm being met with, we've got to learn to live with it among the Brit immigrant community here in Turkey. I hear you. And like the problem that we've got here is, right, that how can you learn to live with something if you're clinically vulnerable and your control measures have just been taken away from you without even being acknowledged as a human being that exists? Because that's what's went on here. And it's really another really troubling thing that people are like desperately comfortable with, like a dry form of eugenics. It's just brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've noticed a change in people. You know, there was this whole thing, oh, I don't want to wear a mask, I don't want to wear a mask. And people, you know, the whole victim, you know, playing the victim when they were having to. Now, I personally, like, especially at this point, do not give a shit whether people wear a mask or not. The vast majority of people are not. However, I still do, because the less lung infections I get, the healthier I am, and it's great. So I continue to do it. However, I see people every day making comments about, you know, people wearing masks. I had somebody say, you know, kind of personally about, you know, kind of ridiculous still wearing a mask, like frightened sheep and things. It's like, it's just, I like wearing masks for a wide variety of reasons, not all of them to do with COVID. To be honest, I'll continue doing so, but I really don't give a shit if you choose not to. Most people aren't. It's fine.
I mean, people can just fuck off with that one. Like, I mean, you know, I think for me, I'm pleased this all happened because I've just seen the big reveal on a lot of people, and that's fine. I think that's like a good thing. I think we should know where we're at with people in life and where we're not. And you know, people always say, well, when, you know, if it came down to a matter of life and death, you know, they'd be there for you. Well, that's not strictly true now, is it, for a lot of people?
No.
So, you know.
No, it's
like,
not. But it goes back to
let's not go any further into that, because it's, you know, we've ran over this week again because we like to talk.
Because we're gobshites, but
Because we're gobshites. But enjoy yourself, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying enjoy yourself. You're going off on a little break, aren't you?
On a jaunt, yes.
Also enjoy yourself sweeping up that bloody glass.
Oh man, I've completely managed to like block the glass out of my memory. It's probably good because then I would have got a shock when I walked next door and there's a big pile of broken glass in the middle of the thing. Oh, it's like, it's not like broken in clean pieces either. This is really bad. No, it's like proper tiny millions of little specks that I am, even though I'm going to like hoover it like about 15,000 times and sweep up and everything like that, I will inevitably stand on a bit and slice my foot open.
Not before you're going off on a break, man. Don't do that.
I'm just going to keep my Crocs on.
I don't know. We're not going anywhere. Are you wearing Crocs?
Yeah.
Just get the shows. I don't believe you.
Hang on. I'm going to have to, because I can't get my feet up here, and I've got them in anarcho-communist colours as well.
So what are they? Did you buy two pairs and then just? Yeah. Right. This is what I'm wearing. Like I wear these around the house.
So what? Like people. I mean, they're not even like proper Crocs. They're just like knockoff things, and like people take the piss out of them. But honestly, I love them, and I don't have plantar fasciitis anymore. From wearing
really, because I had that for like about 18 months after I did the Camino, and it was horrible. I still get like problems. I have to roll my feet on tennis balls and things.
Yeah, I do that still sometimes just to kind of keep them in shape and everything like that and stop them going back to how they were. Because I do get that odd twinge sometimes, but it really is. But basically, that as soon as the pandemic hit and I was working from home, like I've just not had my Crocs off at all, and it's cured them. But then, like I was reading up about it, and this is apparently a thing that people do, and have said, yeah, no, they really help. So
I wish
yeah,
I'd known, because I would have been crocking it up, and I'm going to let you
yeah.
off because plantar is far worse.
It's so painful. It's so.
It's
I would
really
spend
not nice.
like the first 20 minutes of being awake, like because it was always worse first thing in the morning, like literally like hobbling around like a little old lady until they kind of stretched out a little bit. It's it's vile, but no, they're great.
Just before we go,
Crocs.
Joanne, she does it for a tendon problem. The tennis ball thing I think you're referring to, and it really does help.
It really helps, yeah.
It does. Alice, thank you for doing this a bit earlier this week. And fortunately, my internet appears to have not dropped out. So happy with that. Very happy with that. Also happy to see you, but also enjoy a much needed break as well.
Yes, I'm going
not
to
of your furniture in the house, though, the glass and that.
I'm going to look at moss and trees.
Cool. Two of my favorite things also. We haven't talked enough about moss, actually. I know you've got some kind of like real...
I would love to talk about moss.
Honestly, the look on your face as soon as I mentioned the possibility of talking about moss, you were just like, moss, honestly, can we call it moss the cow and just moss daily?
I'm going to calm myself down. Otherwise, we're just going to launch straight into another live stream. We'll leave it there and maybe look at some like random subjects in the future.
That's what we'll definitely do. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Much appreciated. Always a pleasure. Never a chore. I'm just trying to pull up the closing titles as usual, and I'll say adieu because I'm cosmopolitan and I'm French. See you all later.
See you later.
Adieu. Adieu. Adieu.